There is a place I come from. I left it long ago. As a child, I remember it differently now, not as it is, but as it was when I loved it. Carol Rumens writes the Émigrée as part of her exploration of political consciousness, how power, conflict, and tyranny shape individual lives. She had lived in Belfast during the Troubles, a city divided by violence and fear, yet she refused to let that brutality erase her personal memories of warmth and humanity. She doesn't mention a specific place or war in her poem, though. Anyone who has had to leave their homeland behind can relate to it. This poem is about what happens when war and abuse of power forced people to leave their homes for their survival, how memory of a once beautiful life becomes a form of survival for me and my identity. In the Émigrée, Rumens explores three central ideas. First, how war, tyranny, and power can strip people of home and identity. Second, how memory allows displaced people to preserve belonging even when they are physically removed. And finally, how time distances us from childhood innocence, forcing us to reconcile love with painful truth. The poem begins like a fairy tale, as if someone is saying once upon a time. This creates a sense of childhood nostalgia, which is deeply ironic, because the story that follows is shaped by conflict and exile. The word child is cut off at the end of a line, suggesting how my childhood was interrupted. Each stanza ends with sunlight, a repeated motif that shows how I, the speaker, choose to remember my city only in a positive light. But by the end of the poem, that light is threatened. The structure moves from innocence to danger, showing how power can isolate and endanger identity. It may be at war, it may be sick with tyrants. Notice the anaphora. It may be, it may be. There is a deliberate nonchalance here. The modal verb may creates distance, as if war and tyranny are only possibilities, not certainties. This could suggest a child's denial, a refusal to accept a harsh truth, but it can also be read as defiance. I acknowledge the violence, yet I refuse to let it define my home. The personification of the city as sick is crucial. Illness is temporary, treatable. This implies hope, that tyranny is an infection, not the city's true nature. Even as power corrupts, I believe recovery is possible. But I am branded by an impression of sunlight. This line holds beauty and pain. The verb branded is deliberately unsettling. It suggests permanence, force, even violence. On one level, it shows how deeply my home has marked me, a sign of belonging, of ownership, but branding also scars. It suggests trauma, that even positive memories are inseparable from pain. The repetition of sunlight reinforces warmth, hope, pride, yet it is only an impression, not a photograph, not reality. This reveals how memory can soften truth. War and tyrants are powerful, while I cling only to an image of light. Perhaps I cling on to a romanticized fantasy of what my city used to be. That child's vocabulary I carried here, like a hollow doll, opens and spills a grammar. This is where language becomes identity. The possessive phrase, that child's, reminds us I was very young. I left with only words, not any real belongings. A reminder of the cost of war. All I had was a partial language, not fully formed. The verb carried suggests protection. I bore my language through exile, as if it were something precious. The simile, like a hollow doll, is unsettling. It suggests emptiness, loss, a child removed from their voice. But then the doll opens. the grammar spills out, truth becomes unstoppable, language gives me the power to reclaim my story, and perhaps one day my home. My city hides behind me, they mutter death, and my shadow falls as evidence of sunlight. Now the power dynamic shifts. The city is personified as something small, vulnerable, and I protect it. The verb hides creates the image of a frightened child. Perhaps I have become what my city once was to me, a place of safety. The pronoun they is deliberately vague. Tyrants, oppressors, suspicious strangers, the threat is everywhere. And yet, my shadow proves sunlight exists. Even darkness confirms light. Absence proves presence. Just as exile confirms belonging. If I had to be sent away from the city, that means I definitely was in the city at one point. I belonged. The ending is ambiguous. My shadow falling could suggest danger, even death. But it could also suggest survival, a self strong enough to carry memory forward. Perhaps symbolize my metaphorical return to the city when I speak up. The shadow representing the dark truths I can now tell to save my city from its oppressors. For a grade 9 response, remember, the Émigrée explores exile and identity. It contrasts childhood memory with adult truth, and it shows how memory resists power and oppression. To deepen your analysis, watch the full poem videos for the rest of the Power and Conflict anthology, right here on GCSE LitVerse, where characters teach you literature.